Okay, so I'm just gonna import some chroma key stuff. I think I had some kind of stock footage. The workspace when I mirror the display gets a little strange, so let me just find where it imported my footage to. Hold on just a second. I think it's down here. There it is. So when I mirror my screen, it gets smaller or something. But basically, I imported this footage that I had that's just stock footage. And I'm going to drag this to my timeline. And it's going to create my sequence for me based on the settings that the video was shot. So here, they've kind of shot this sort of, it's like a Bollywood actress in front of a green screen, and she's pointing a gun. And then the kind of goal here is to remove the green so that we can place this, this video over other backgrounds or kind of change the context of how it was shot. Now you can use any color really to chroma key. Chroma just means color, and keying means like you're removing it. The most common sort of color used though is green, because this shade of green isn't one that's like commonly found in nature. But you could technically chroma key with any color. It just gets more difficult, because what if your background color was white, which is like a very common thing. So if you keyed that color out, you probably wouldn't have your whole figure, because the whites of someone's eyes would disappear, their teeth would disappear, etc. So green is the most common color that's used, just because this shade of green is a relatively unusual color. So then the first thing that we would do is under effects. So you don't have to do this part, but I always do this part just because I think it saves work at the end, is under opacity. You have the option to add a mask. And remember, we did this last class with masking. You can put in a mask so that you're creating what's known as like a garbage mat, so that you're sort of just masking out the area. You're just masking out all the areas that you're not going to touch anyway. So like, for example, in this video, our real area of interest is just here, right? It's just where this figure holding this gun is. All this kind of green to the side and to the top, we can get rid of that, because that doesn't have to be part of our video. She never moves into that frame, so we're not even going to use it. So to save ourselves some work of having to key out all of this stuff, we're just going to create, the first thing that we're going to do is create a mask. So if you go into your video effects window, your effects control window, your mask is going to be located under the opacity tab. And you have several options to create a mask. You can just use their ellipse primitive, their 4-point polygon square primitive, or you can use the free draw Bezier. I generally prefer to use the free draw Bezier because most kind of shapes aren't super, they're not going to conform to like a simple circle or a simple square. So the free draw Bezier lets you just kind of draw your own shape. So once you have it selected, this pen tool will come up and you'll see in your effects control window that it added a mask. So here it says mask parentheses 1. You can have multiple masks. For this though, we can probably just use one. And you just start again by kind of placing points around the figure that you want to use. And again, the goal here is just to kind of cut out some work for ourselves. So by doing this, we're sort of now we don't have to worry about any of that green that was on the side or on the top. And if we need to adjust our mask points, we can just pull them with our arrow tool. Masks are really powerful. This is the most that we'll do with them in this class. In my animation class, which we do more After Effects, we'll use masks more because it's kind of a special effects thing. But you can use masks. You can invert the mask so that you're not showing her, you're just showing what's outside of the mask. But for our purposes, we want to just keep the mask normal, which is to just kind of mask out some of that green. So again, the reason that I did that is because I don't want to have to do all the work to sort of get the green out of this entire screen when all of my action is sort of just incorporated right here. So that was the first thing that I did, was just to draw that mask. The second thing that I'm going to do, if I go to like my effects panel, I'm going to look for an effect under video effects, under keying, called Ultra Key. Now, Ultra Key is going to basically allow me to kind of take all of that green out. So I'm going to take an instance of this Ultra Key and just drop it on my video. And it appears in my effects control window. And the part that I'm looking for here is for the key color. Right now it's default set to black. I want to set it to green though, to get rid of that green. So I'm going to take the eyedropper and I'm just going to kind of select a portion of green of this screen. You might have to do this a few times. So you can see as soon as I selected the green, it already dimmed. So that means that some of that green is going away. And then I can go into my matte cleanup, or in my matte generation, and kind of change. The most powerful kind of tool here is the tolerance. So the tolerance says, what level green should I accept? So when you set it lower, it's going to be very specific about the color green that it's going to select. So you can see that that green becomes more solid. If we set it higher, more of it goes away because we become less selective about the color green that we are using. Does everyone understand that?
And what is that key again? That little button there, that's called what?
Which one?
I'm sorry, what you just did is called what?
The tolerance.
Tolerance.
So you can see here, we still have a little bit of green kind of on the bottom. I could make it more tolerant and get rid of it all. But when I do that, actually, that worked for here, but let's pretend it didn't. So let's say it was kind of that, just sort of that tolerant. I could run another instance of the Ultra Key, and all I need to do, so let's say, so I was able to get kind of the top part out, but my scene was lit unevenly, so all the part that's kind of below her, I wasn't able to key that out. All I have to do is just put in another instance of my Ultra Key. So I'll just grab my Ultra Key, drop it on my video track, set my key color again. But this time I'm going to set my key color to be the color green that we didn't get out on the first pass, right? So if I set it to that, and I go into matte generation and color and tolerance again, I can get more of that green out. So sometimes when you're working with your footage, it's really just a matter of kind of running. You may need more than one key and kind of playing around with it, your tolerance and your spill suppression until you get kind of a really clean key. So the other options that I have are here to kind of get rid of the highlights and the shadows. So I could kind of play with some of those.
Nice.
So what I was afraid of there is it got rid of that when I pulled down on the shadow, but it also kind of cut into her, right?
Yeah.
So I don't want that. I kind of want to leave it. She's like the most important part of this. So I'm going to leave the shadow where it was. And I'm going to try to find some other way to get rid of that. Under my matte cleanup, I could play with the choke. I could soften my matte a little bit. If I play with the contrast, it looks like some of that, more of that stuff goes away. So if I play with the midpoint, I can get most of it out without kind of losing her body. And then under spill suppression, I have options for desaturate. And if I play with the Luma, I pretty much got all of it out there. So sometimes really it's just a matter of running, multiple instances of this key to get a really clean.
But that little spot, the little gray spot, you can't get rid of that? Or
No, you can. You just have to kind of spend a little bit more time with it. So we could run another key, or we could look at what some of our other options are. So if I leave my shadow there, I could get rid of it. And then I could maybe take down, pull up my soften. So when I did that, it's pretty much gone, right? So that was just a matter of turning up my shadow, and then instead of making my mask softer, I made it a little bit harder, right? So now, that looks pretty good. It's a really clean key. So sometimes, and it's going to change depending on how you shot your footage, those are the things that you really just have to play with. So now I have this pretty good key. Let's see, like I can import now. So now from here, just move it up. I have this kind of clean image that I can now duplicate or place under other backgrounds. So I have this other background that happens to be this video. So if I place that background below her, now she's kind of like, I don't know, being tough in an office or something. So using this technique, we can kind of like recontextualize sort of video that we've shot, right? And that's a pretty clean key. Like I don't really see any sort of issues with that. And then you can also kind of duplicate this video. So we could just copy it and paste it, and now we have let's paste it over here. So now we have a few different kind of instances of this person. So we could either, maybe use it at multiple spots, or we could make it sort of more complicated with like how you guys are doing and having different sort of elements interact with one another. So we could kind of interpolate time. So see what's happening there, where there's like two images of her. Or we could just kind of move the position. So if we go back into our effects control window for our second clip, we can change its position. We can rotate, her a little bit. If we want, we can put other effects on this. So if we go into our video effects, let's say we want one of them to have kind of a sort of distortion. We'll put this mirror on here. I don't really remember what the mirror does. A different one. So here's the mirror effect. So it kind of does that, it looks like. So that's kind of just the idea of your projects, is you sort of shot, most of you have already shot, but you shot yourself in front of a green screen, and you're going to kind of recontextualize that video image either by putting a different background around it, so placing that video in a different environment, or by kind of allowing your characters to sort of interact with each other in different ways. All right? So that's it for that.